I'm here to talk to you about manufacturing and how we are going to collectively help build the factories of the future. This is a battery cell. Most of you use this product every day without even knowing about it. This type of platform technology powers things like your consumer electronics, maybe electric vehicles, but most people never stop to think about how these batteries get made. This battery was most likely started its life in a salt flat like this, in a place like Bolivia or Chile, where the salts get mined out of the ground and made into a clay powder. Those clay powders get loaded into mixing tanks where it gets made into a slurry paste, and then that paste gets coated onto an electrode. It's a kind of like making a letter or an envelope of some sort. And after that process, those strips of the battery get wound up into what's called a jelly roll. Those jelly rolls get loaded into cans, like a Campbell's soup can, if you will. And each battery is individually inspected and scanned with X-ray technology to make sure that there are no defects, no bumps, or other impurities that will make your product not work the way you want it to. The interesting thing about this process is that so much of this happens outside of the US. It really doesn't have to be that way. The solution might seem really simple to you. Why don't we just make more of the things that we need here in the US? I'm sure we can find a factory or a company, someone here that can make it. The sad reality is that most of the factories that would be capable of making these high-tech products are now run down and shuttered. These places that were once full of life are now a shell of their former selves. It wasn't always this way, though. This is the US Steel Homestead Works factory in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my hometown, where my grandfather and 6 of my uncles worked and started their careers. Places like this, they were the factories of the world, in fact. They helped support the defense industry during World War II and during the war efforts. They supported the automotive industry in places like Detroit, and also the aviation industry for all the planes that companies like Boeing and others make. We've been racking up a major trade deficit because we don't make so much of these things here anymore. This calculation is very simple. Exports minus imports. In the last few years, in 2024, the US actually imported $1 trillion more than it exported. I just want to make sure you heard me right. $1 trillion more than it exported. And this is one of the biggest policy issues that we have in our time, is to try to think about how do we close this gap. There are really 2 ways to think about it. We can either import less or export more, or we could make more of the things that we need here in the US so that we don't have to rely so much on external partners to make them for us. You know, it's interesting, this is actually one of the few issues that both Democrats and Republicans agree on, is that we need to do more of these things here at home. President Joe Biden, during his term, preached about building back better and building back the infrastructure that we once lost. And President Trump now touts the Make America Great Again, which is also the same effort to bring more of this manufacturing back here so that we are not only independent in our manufacturing, but that we also are able to create living wage jobs that people can use to feed their families. I'll start my personal story about manufacturing in the early 1900s, when my grandparents were part of a wave of migration called the Great Migration. In post-slavery Reconstruction era, millions of African Americans moved from the Deep South to places like Pittsburgh in search of better economic opportunities. These are my grandparents. That's John and Goldie Mae Drewery. They were 2 of these migrants during this time that moved to Pittsburgh in search of these opportunities. And thankfully, they were able to find great jobs at US Steel, making these steel products, and a good enough living wage that they were able to raise a family of 20 children. If you don't believe me, this is just the girls. 13 girls and 7 boys. And this is lucky number 15, my dad, Will Drewery, who started his career working in the steel mills in Pittsburgh. My dad, during this time, spent a lot of his time worrying about manufacturing and how his job was taken away during this really important time of his life. And so you can understandably see why he was very reluctant when I told him I was interested in pursuing a career in manufacturing. In the last few years, there is now a new wave of innovation happening. Industries like the semiconductor industry that are supporting the data centers that underpin companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, the batteries that support the consumer electronics products and additional power storage needs for these AI use cases, and defense applications for things like cube satellites that support the defense industry are all things that need to be made here in the US. For strategic reasons and for national security reasons, we need more places where we can make these things. And there's good news. The good news is you're going to help us do it. We all need to really think about how we are going to support this industry in a few ways. I'll name 3 of them, 3 at the top of my list at least. We can start by investing in infrastructure. The factory infrastructure that underpins this entire industry is one of the most important things that we need to enable ourselves to be able to make these things. Batteries and semiconductors aren't things that can just be assembled by hand. You actually need state-of-the-art technology, and you need to make real investments in that technology in order to make cutting-edge products like the ones that I just showed you. It's going to rely on technology. This is my company, Diagon. We're just one of many examples of companies that are building in this space to support the manufacturing industry. We've built a marketplace that helps companies find surplus and overstock assets that are available from big manufacturers so that companies that want to build these factories can do them at a fraction of the cost and very short lead times. And third, it's going to rely on people. It's going to rely on a workforce of people who are willing and interested in getting into this industry. It's going to require us to really think about what it means to pay living wages for people to work in these industries. And this is not just going to rely on the people that are working in these factories. These people with hard hats are really just one fraction of the people that need to support it. When I think back to my interest in getting into the manufacturing industry, a lot of my relatives were not so happy about that idea and weren't very encouraging of it. All of you probably know people in your lives, maybe young people, hopefully young people, that are interested in pursuing careers, building things that are physical and tangible that we all can rely on. And I think it's going to be up to all of us to change the perspective and to change the narrative about what it means to make these products. I hope you all join me in this journey. I want to thank you in advance. It's been a pleasure.